Yo, we're back with you again. The Sports Bag Bros podcast is back on the scene. Episode number 14. I'm Trav, he's biased, and we're taking you on the journey for the sports conversation that we look to have at least 4 times a week because we know sports is continuous. Things are always popping up, and we're going to get to it because we're on the eve of the NBA draft. But in addition to that, we have other things that are popping up in the sports world, in the NFL, the NBA, even Major League Baseball. So we'll get around to that. But we'll do all of that and come back to you after we intro ourselves. And as you see, we are back. I'm Trav, he's biased. We are the Sports Bag Bros podcast. This is episode 14. If you're looking at us right now, you're seeing us on YouTube. If you want to see us on YouTube or anywhere else, give us a thumbs up. More likely, give us a like because that's going to help subscribe to the channel. It helps the algorithm, et cetera, et cetera. You already know what it is. Also, we're on Instagram. We're also on Facebook. We're on Spotify. If you want a long workout, short workout, whatever, check us out there. We're on Google Podcasts. We're on Apple Podcasts. We're on iHeart. We're everywhere. We're spreading it thin. We're spreading it long. Bias eye on the scene. Bias. How are you doing today on this pre-draft Wednesday?
I'm doing well. I got no complaints. You know, it's just odd, really odd. We thought after the NBA Finals, we were going to have a dead period.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of stories out there. These guys giving us a lot of things to talk about. Unfortunately, some negative, but, you know, there's some positive out there also. You know, so let's get started. Let's touch on them.
That's right. And some of those positive things is some of these kids in the NBA are aspiring to be NBA players. The dream is about to come true tomorrow. You know, we may get our broadcast done before that, but nevertheless, they're getting their dream of playing in the NBA happening tomorrow. There's a litany of players out there waiting for that. We will touch on some of those players as we move forward into this show. And of course, we'll start with number 1, Victor Wembanyama. Everyone's been talking about this guy for some time now. 7'4", 7'5". No matter what you're talking about, it's still very tall in the NBA. But what he does on the court is most important. The way he moves, the way he touches the ball. You've watched a video or at least a clip of what he does, and we're about to play it in a moment. What are your opinions on him before we get to the clip?
He's an amazing talent, you know, to be that tall, have handles like he does, have a shooting touch like he does, be athletic as he is, you know, get to the spot on the floor that he wants to get to, follow his own shot, miss a three-pointer, and Tim Duncan in. I mean, he does amazing things on the court.
Yeah, he's a little on the thin side right now. You know, when you look at his body, you might think of someone from the past, maybe Manute Bol, but he's a lot more athletic than Manute Bol. But even Sean Bradley, who wasn't that athletic, but he was still there. He didn't have the three-point shot. But this is a different NBA as well. There aren't going to be so many people banging on his body. And if so, you've seen also how he can get to the perimeter and make plays there. That's very rare for someone that height.
Yeah, you know, I don't envy the Spurs GM or, you know, their front office tonight because it's hard to pass up on him. But you do have concerns because of his build. You know, he has very slight build, and with that long frame, you know, you think of other tall players who have had debilitating injuries that prevented them from becoming stars like they thought they were going to be. And so, you know, there's a concern there. But, you know, I saw a clip of him, an interview he did with JJ Redick, Mamba mentality. You know, he's very confident. So maybe that's what would be the reason why you go with him, because he does have that mentality.
Yeah, but we hope his body doesn't fail him because we've seen that in the past with players. You know, even Yao Ming having the foot problems, even Bill Walton going back had foot problems. Guys of that size having foot problems doesn't seem like it's something that's obscure. That thing happens fairly often when you look at these top players. I'm hoping that the injuries with his foot or anywhere else aren't that big that he can have the NBA career he's looking for, because we all benefit if he does as well as he does. But let me get to that video real quick so you all can see just a little bit of what he does on the basketball court.
Behind the back bounce pass to Wemby. Sizing up his defender, Dokosi. Tough fadeaway. Doesn't matter.
Posting against Fisher.
Puts it on the deck, spinning, fading, and connecting. State Warriors. A few years
Look at that.
back.
Bring the double team. Oh, my gosh. Oh, my God.
Just curious to see how he deals with physicality with guys moving him. But again, you have that kind of length. It starts with a nice counter. Wait a minute.
That looked like one of Jokic's three-pointers.
On the baseline? Oh, yes.
Yeah,
we're starting to see this trend where
right now
athletes are becoming way more skilled.
There's Waters on the drive, setting up Wemby.
Yeah. We didn't talk about his defense.
Puts it in.
Him being so athletic, he's going to alter and block a lot of shots.
Yeah, the high teens for points per game is very, very, very impressive. So,
nice roll for Wembanyama, and did well.
And the good thing about him is that and other players who will get drafted tomorrow, we don't have to wait a long time to see them play. They're going to be in the summer league, the majority of them. He said he's playing in the summer league as well. He expects to. You know, I don't know about injury and if the San Antonio Spurs are going to be worried about the injury bug in the preseason. You know, Zion Williamson had that issue years ago. But, hey, I think it would be in his best interest to play in the summer league. You don't have to play every game. Just give the fans what they want for the beginning so that they can drool and wait until the regular season.
Yeah, another concern I would have is he only played 19 games last season. So coming from 19 to an 82-game season, you know, that's a big, big step. At least in college, you know, they get close to 40 games. Yeah. You know, depending how far they go in the tournament. You know, at least they could say that's almost half, you know.
Yeah. And even those guys hit the wall. I mean, we've seen several players years ago hit the wall. Now, every now and then you have an anomaly, and he's considered a generational talent like LeBron James was when you could come out of high school like LeBron James or Kobe and play an 82-game season. But those guys, other than I think LeBron was not rushed, they just allowed his talent to flourish. Kobe was brought along slowly, but we saw that the talent was there. He just had to harness it, and they let it go. We saw what he turned out to be. Now, you're right, 19 games to 82 games. You may love the game. You may even be one of these AAU guys that plays nothing but basketball from the very beginning. But trust me, when you're doing it for a living, playing against the best players on the planet, athletes and otherwise, it gets a lot more difficult. It's still fun. It's still challenging, but it's a weigh and grind on a 19-year-old body. He's not that big. He's still young.
And then you're talking about the travel, you know, late nights, early mornings, checking out of hotels. You know, that's a lot for a young guy to have to deal with. And then you're talking about playing games against the best in the world too. You know, that's a lot to ask for. So I'm not sure we should expect all that much. You know, as many young players, he's going to show flashes, of course.
Yes. So. And by the way, we're still looking for Chet Holmgren to come back from a player who was injured last year before the season started for Oklahoma City. He'll be back in his first year. So we're going to have a whole bunch of tall guys who are thin but have a hell of a game. And by the way, during that video, did you see him at the perimeter with his handle a little bit? I mean, he has somewhat of a handle. He was able to drive off the handle and go to the rim. I mean, that's different talent. The NBA will rip you, and they will be there for you. But it's nice to see that he has that in the beginning of his game because he can only get better if everything goes according to plan. So, of course.
Yeah, I mentioned his handles, and he can still improve those handles.
Oh, absolutely. Why not? And, you know, he's not the only one getting drafted tomorrow, but right now he's the big name, and I guess being the #1 overall pick for the San Antonio Spurs. He's the prize of the draft, but this draft is not without some names and even some storylines that will help a lot of teams or possibly help a lot of teams because we don't know until we do know because we've seen so many star players come through the pipelines over the decades, and not everyone lived happily ever after, Sebastian Telfair being one of those way back in the day, but he was an undersized guard, et cetera, poor shot, but he was excellent as a point guard. Nevertheless, we're talking Scoot Henderson. Scoot Henderson from the G League, Ignite Elite, another one of those programs of people who did not go to college, went straight to the G League and developed his game there. And I think seeing guys like him, It's more of a result of what we're seeing in college basketball right now, where the parity is like at an all-time high, where 6 teams are beating ones because the talent isn't what it once was because they don't only have college to go to anymore.
Right. And I think the issue with Scoot is him being 6'2".
Yeah.
If he were 6'5", 6'6", he probably would be the number 1 pick. But him being a little undersized, there haven't been a lot of undersized players that lead their teams to championships. You can count them on one hand, Steph and Isaiah. That's about it.
I was about to say pretty much the same thing. I mean, you had Chris Paul not leading them to success by having a successful NBA career, Hall of Fame NBA career, but not leading to a championship. But look at the reality. The most of these players aren't going to be NBA champions one day. You know what I mean? It's only, for a certain group of people, not even probably from this draft, that will get to a championship. But his backstory is just as good, smooth, exciting, and interesting as his game. He comes from Georgia. He went to, didn't go to college. At 17 years old, he went to, the G League, Ignite Elite, from Georgia of all places. And his father, I think, his father and mom, they came from New York, Hempstead, New York, which is Long Island. They came down to Atlanta. He was from the Marietta, Georgia area. That's where he's from originally. They started a basketball program. It's like, I think it was called 360. Play 360. They develop players and so forth. But being the son of those people, he's going to develop as well. And there's no surprise he's there because he also had the talent. He has the pedigree. He had the talent. And now he's where he's at right now. And more importantly, I mean, he did sign a contract with Puma coming out. So he's making his money already. And that's kind of along the lines of the NIL. These programs like Overtime Elite, now G League Elite before the elite high school players, they got opportunities like that for NIL as well.
Yeah, more power to them. Get it while you can.
Yeah.
It's out there, go get it.
So, with the draft still in mind, Brandon Miller, this is a guy, if you watched college basketball last year, the University of Alabama, you saw what happened in terms of someone getting killed. Now, he didn't have
Dow Joneser.
Huh?
He's a Dow Joneser.
This exactly. This is what's going on. But will he drop? Will he drop in this draft because of that, or because he wasn't directly involved in what had happened? NBA teams get to just swallow it, take the heat, pick a play like that because he is immensely talented.
Yeah, but I mean, he's responsible for his 3 for 19 shooting in the tournament when they got bounced. He's responsible. He's responsible for only scoring 8 against Houston when they lost to Houston. So does he show up against top competition? That's the question.
That's true. But he played well throughout his entire college career, which I think was one season. But either way, he's played other good teams. He's done well against teams. When it was really on the line, he didn't do well, but they were good until they weren't good. The entire Alabama team was based on just shooting threes. You know what I mean? They just had that much athleticism. So I think they got into that rut of shooting a whole bunch of threes and shooting themselves out of games. We saw that can happen even in the NBA. We saw John Starks against the Houston Rockets years ago in '94, doing the same thing, going 0 for 11, and he's on the highest level all year long. He's hitting threes, but when they needed it, ice cold, and the Knicks got bumped.
Yeah, if he didn't have those games, then there would be no questions. He's got the size. You think he has the shooting ability, but you have to question why didn't he show up in those games?
True. You know what? Believe it or not, I think really the most important thing is what had happened off the court. I think they see his athleticism. They project him a certain way. I think all teams, he's going in the lottery regardless. And I think they're looking more of what happened off of the field, keeping the wrong friends. Darius Miles, the guy he brought the gun for, and they shot Janae Jones and killed her. And they tried to put it on him. I mean, there's a way they could have put it on him because it was he who brought the gun to the scene or allowed the gun to get taken out of his possession. And what happened. I'm just wondering because if in the NFL, it seems like they look at it a little bit more serious when something like this happens. And we'll get to NFL talk in a minute when something else has happened, and we'll see how that plays out. But in basketball, it looks like, I didn't hear too much talk about what happened off the court. They're still just talking about he projects as a good NBA player. He's definitely a lottery pick, and he is talent-wise.
Right. We just have to see where he goes and how he develops and will he show up in big moments.
Yep. And as an aside, outside of Alabama, I was talking about someone we hadn't really put on the scene, Grady Dick. Now, of course, I hope that the Facebook, the YouTube algorithm doesn't screw me over for saying Grady Dick, but that's his name. Playing for Kansas, and he's coming to the draft. And some people, he's in the top 10 now. He's played one season. And I think the Christian Brown effect might be the reason why he'll get drafted. Now, he shot over 40% from three-point range for Kansas. He's played only one season, so he doesn't have that championship pedigree that Christian Brown had playing for Kansas' championship team and then going to Denver. But he does have that game and that overall game that the NBA could work on. I wanted to throw him out there because that's somebody I think is rising on the charts as well and will be a lottery pick because of it.
Definitely. Anybody that can stroke a three, is going to get attention in the NBA nowadays.
Especially now. I mean, when guys are having a fast break, when they're stopping at half court just to shoot. That's a fast break these days. Dudes aren't even working it down the court.
Yeah, you got the two guys on the wing go to the corner.
Yeah, wasn't there a game last season or the season before when there was a chance to win the game and everybody pretty much stopped at the three-point line when they could have easily just driven, but there was no one down there. They just stopped at the three-point line and shot and missed. Lost the game.
I think that was Jimmy Butler.
Unbelievable, man.
But I was okay with Jimmy taking that shot. He went for it. It just didn't work out. But he got roasted by a lot of people saying he had a lane to the hoop. Why didn't he go to the basket?
Yeah, he did.
But on the road, usually you don't want to go into overtime on the road.
No,
he went for it, and I'm not mad at him. He had the balls to take the shot. Hey, we're gonna win or lose on this shot. That takes a lot of balls. A lot of players wouldn't take that shot.
I don't want to lose on the road either. I mean, I don't want to go overtime. I don't want to freaking lose either. I mean, if you're an NBA player, you're wired differently. Players who are on the highest level of whatever sport they're in, they're wired differently. They want to win. You have some people who have a losing culture, but someone wants to win.
You got to think about who we're talking about here. Jimmy. Jimmy thinks he's that guy.
Yeah,
so he had the confidence to take that shot, just missed it.
Well, and we know what Jimmy turned out to be, regardless of what happened in this last playoff game or last championship series. I think, even if he doesn't win a championship one day, he's getting into the Hall of Fame, and I think his whole game will get respected. If Charles Barkley's game is getting respected for being a hardcore, tough player on the court, why wouldn't Jimmy Butler? He goes out there giving it everything he has as well. You don't question him other than the shots that he missed once he's off the court. You can't say that he didn't take those shots or that he didn't take advantage of everything he had out there when it was all said and done. But as far as this draft goes, you have the twins, Amen and Asur Thompson from Overtime Elite. Twins, the first time twins may go in the lottery of the NBA draft. I think even first time they're going in the first round of the NBA draft. I can't remember any other twins that have gone at the same time.
Maybe the McRae brothers.
Who?
Scooter and Rodney McRae, maybe. Maybe not.
I just can't remember at the moment. But as it stands right now, those two may go in the lottery. Excellent players.
Crazy athletic. They got length. They're very appealing to a lot of NBA teams.
But I think the even bigger picture is the Overtime Elite platform, the Overtime Elite entity that these players can now go to. They take players from 16 to 19. That means you can reclassify even as a 16-year-old and still go there instead of going to high school. They're already pros essentially before they even get to the NBA. They're better than college players, and they have all of the benefits because I know there are people out there saying that you should think about your education. You know what? They got an opportunity to go to college, up to 12 hours they could take while they're there. As far as money, they get at least $100,000. At least $100,000. They take care of you. Look who it's funded by. Jeff Bezos is part of it. Drake is part of it. Kevin Durant. I think even Melo. There's a number of people who are big wigs and have heavy pockets that are financing Overtime Elite. I talked about it a couple of years ago, and this is coming to fruition. I mean, and it's another reason why college basketball has the parity that it has. The quality isn't there like it used to be, but the parity is there because those top teams are now leaving. I mean, and going back to Scoot, by the way, Scoot Henderson, he and Mikey Williams had a battle. I think it was Hoops Given back in 2-3 years ago. Hoops Given, they had a battle back and forth. Mikey Williams, for people who follow basketball, he's in trouble now. Hopefully he gets out of it. He's a Memphis commit. He was one of the top players. It was he and LeBron's son going back and forth, even though he was the better player. But anyways, it kind of plays itself into this narrative here. And by the way, there was a kid named Jason Gortman. He made $650,000 playing overtime elite, man. Come on. I mean, this is an NIL deal all in itself.
You can't hate on it, man.
Oh no, absolutely. I can't.
Take advantage of whatever opportunities come your way.
Times have changed, and I can live with those changing times. And these guys are benefiting. You're always going to have someone out there that tells them that you should get the education, which under your circumstances you may or may not need, because you do have people around you that you may surround yourself with that are capable of helping you manage what you're getting. It doesn't require a college degree, and sometimes not even a high school diploma, to let you know how astute you could be in life. For those who do it, it's an anomaly, but it can happen. I mean, I don't want to roll dice here, but that's it with the NBA draft guys we want to talk about right now, because there's NBA talk going on right now. We thought it was going away outside of the NBA draft, but then we look up and we see someone like Bruce Brown refusing $6.8 million after he claimed he was okay with running it back next season. But you know what? I'm running it back for a couple of days, and I still want to see if I can get paid more than my $6.8 million I'm getting with Denver.
Just like we mentioned, when Jokic was in front of the crowd at the parade, he said all the right things. Maybe that's not how he really feels. Maybe he really did want to be home, but he's not going to say that to that crowd at the parade. So maybe Brown got caught up in the same way, and he said something, and a couple of days later, maybe his agent called him, hey, what is your plan? You really gonna pick up your own option, or do you want to test the waters? So obviously he said, no, you know what, I'll decline my player option and let's go test the waters. But I think teams have to be careful. He got hot in the playoffs, but is he going to be a starter? Is he going to take you, from being a fringe contender to now you could possibly make a lot of noise? Or are you going to sign him as a bench player, which means what kind of contract is he going to get?
And that contract is still, if it makes good business sense and makes it worth his while, it has to be more than the $6.8 million he was presently getting. I mean, maybe it could be going back to Denver. I don't know. But I think because of the way the NBA is right now, even with all the changes, with the luxury tax coming in, the aprons they have in the luxury tax, I think that there's someone who would pay him that. And would he be a starter? He never played a full season. He never played all 82 games. I mean, he's been a part-time player for all the teams he's played with up until now. Denver, Brooklyn, now here. And what was it? Detroit, Brooklyn, and Denver. So, and he's never played the entire season. As you say, he got hot at the right time, but he wasn't hot all season. Now, is someone going to look at that value and say, you know what, maybe he's got it. He finally got it because he has a ring, or having a ring is the reason why he can walk away and have a perfect career, even if he's a backup the rest of his life.
Yeah, we have to see if he gets any offers from other teams, what kind of offers he gets. But, Denver, if I'm Denver's GM, I like my squad. I call them up. I say, hey, what exactly are you looking for? And see if we can make a deal.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, why not? He gets a chance to run it back. They may give him a bump in his salary, 6.8. In the NBA, a bump could be another $4 million. But if he overrates himself, if he's delusional, he'll ask for some ridiculous amount. And maybe somebody like a Washington Wizards team, which is imploding anyway, blowing money, they have the room for it. He might go there, get the money, play for a bad team, just live happily ever after off the court. The court is just somewhere you just play basketball.
That could be true. He got his chip, try and get a bag. And who cares if they finish 12-6, 70? He got his bag.
He wouldn't be the first one to do it. And with all of these players deciding to decline their options and go and test free agent waters, Kyle Kuzma was another one who's done the same. He does have some ability. We've seen him. We've seen his act before, but
he couldn't get out of there fast enough. Couldn't get out of there fast enough. Bradley Beal's gone. Getting rid of the unicorn. Man, I'm out. I'm out too.
And why not? I mean, I think he will command more than he was getting. I believe $12 million was on his. I think getting out of there, he'll get a little bit more than that because even when he was with the Lakers, there wasn't enough basketballs on the court because when he got hot, he was hot. He needs to find the perfect situation for him to where, hey, you know what? Why not go to somewhere like Denver? Are they going to be able to give him that kind of money? They just finished splurging on Joker, last season and gotten their money's worth already, in my opinion. There's more championships to come possibly. But, yeah, there's a lot going on. Kyle Kuzma really could help a team out there.
Yeah, definitely. He's a quality player.
Yes.
Championship experience. So, he could be a key piece to a team that has championship aspirations.
Now we get to
Philadelphia 76ers.
The Sixers, you can come up with the Sixers every time there's a player, and you're right a lot of times because of it. The Sixers could use these
and
players.
And needs help, man. Well, or no, Maxey and Tobias Harris need some help.
They need help.
They're the leading scorers in Game 7, so let's get those guys some help.
And that's, hey, it makes a lot of sense if he goes there, and it seems like that's the magnet, and a player like that could be the one who helps put Philly over the top. I know they have to get used to the new coach and all that other stuff, but they have the pieces in place to really make a push. But as they're trying to push, the Boston Celtics are trying to get better as well. They're talking about bringing in Kristaps Porzingis from the Wizards, and he has a $30+ million option that he's turning down. This guy's looking for some big money too.
Yeah, that would be a big move for the Celtics. They get another big body guy who can stretch the floor. He shot almost 39% from three last year. He averaged like 20 points a game, so he can put the ball in the hoop for sure. And probably come off the bench and provide a punch.
Yep, and once again, for those of you who don't know what you're watching, if you just stumbled upon us, even on this recorded version, this is the Sports Bag Bros podcast. The 14th
up in the corner.
Episode. We're on
Sports Bag Bros.
That's right, Sports Bag Bros podcast, the 14th episode. If you're interested in acronyms, we have SBBP. If you're down with that, I'm Trav. He's biased. We're here 4 days a week trying to have the conversation about sports. It doesn't even matter what sport it is. There's going to come a time when you will be able to converse with us in a setting to where we can go back and forth live on the topics that interest you. We will continue to put this kind of content out there 4 times a week. And make sure if you're on YouTube, make sure you subscribe to the channel, like the page of the channel. Make sure that this algorithm gets out to other people who are interested in listening to the sports talk. We're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, we're on Spotify. So there's your just click on it. No downloads required. Just click on Spotify for your long podcast, or you have iHeart Radio. You have Apple. God, I got to remember all these. You have Apple Podcasts, we have Google Podcasts. There's so many podcasts, but we're out there reaching out to you. And hopefully you all get to join the conversation with us as we'll continue to bring you as many sports as possible. Even during this dead period, we still have more than what we need, and an embarrassment of riches when it comes down to the sports world. And to Kristaps Porzingis, as we already have mentioned, possibly heading to Boston. And even with that big money he has, if Boston has him on the roster, they will still be $8 million under the second tax apron with the 12 players on the roster. They're in a good spot, and they're showing they're trying to still win.
Yeah, I would like to move. I mentioned he averaged 20 points a game. He actually averaged 23 points a game last year. So he can definitely score in the league. And adding another 20-plus point scorer to Tatum and Brown, I mean, they could be lethal.
Is he still the unicorn? That's what I want to know, because as a Knicks fan, watching him first come in, the only good move that Phil Jackson made as president of the Knicks, the only good move that he made was that move, and he got booed for it. And Porzingis turned out to be a heck of a player until the injury. And then we hear about the behind-the-scenes shenanigans with his family going back and forth with the Dolans who own the Knicks, and that didn't work out. He ends up down in Dallas. I thought that would be a formidable mix between he and Luka. It's like Batman and Robin, but no, there wasn't any Robin because they couldn't decide who was Batman. And then there was jealousy, I believe, because he says, I don't feel like I'm part of the team. I don't feel like that we're equals. Well, I don't go by what they were doing on that team. I don't believe you weren't equals. You weren't meant to be equals. You're supposed to be complementary. That was what you're supposed to have been. And all of these things he brings to the table, he can shoot the three. He glides through. Now, I don't know if he has the explosiveness he had before he had the injury for the Knicks, but he still, as you said, scores the points. but are those empty points? I think in somewhere like Boston, they would not be empty points.
Right. And with the reduced row, save his legs, save his knees, save his feet.
Mm-hmm.
And, he could probably be even more effective playing in the limited row because he can go harder. He can go harder for 14, 15 minutes instead of knowing he's going to play 28 or 30.
That's true. I mean, it weighs on you mentally when you know you have to go out there and grind. And I think he's past worrying about the injury, but I don't know. I'm not in his head. But I can see how, he can still worry about that. Being a big guy like that, and we were just talking about how a lot of these big guys have these injuries that show up, especially with their feet. So it may be the Achilles now, the knee later, but the feet are ultimately going to feel it. And we've seen it, foot injuries for tall guys, man. It seems like that's just almost status quo. When these guys get up into that atmosphere of 7'3" and 7'4", you start getting these types of injuries.
Yeah, the NBA is about mismatches, and the more players you can get on your team who can find their own shot or complement another's game, that just makes you more dangerous. But getting into Luka, he might be the type of player that he maybe like Jimmy. You just got to surround him with solid players who know their jobs, know their roles, and maybe he can't play with another superstar.
That's probably true.
Maybe they can't play with him.
I'm wondering that because he has the ball a lot and he takes a lot of shots, Luka. And, he turns the ball over a lot too. I think he did better last season than he's been doing since he's come to the NBA. And you know what? As a little side note, I think that the way Jokic is, not just being European, I just think that the way that he has the touch and he does these little things that looks like he doesn't put out a lot of energy. Maybe the Boston Celtics got their version of Joker with Porzingis. I think he could be that kind of a player. I mean, he does have the touch. He does move a little bit more, puts a little bit more energy into what he's doing, but he's been successful with it while he's been in the NBA.
Yeah, he'd be a very poor man's Jokic.
Yeah, a broke man's Jokic. Yeah. Hey, but for the pieces that Boston already has, that might be good enough.
Like I said, I think it's a good pickup. And he can make them more dangerous than they currently are.
Yeah, and well, you know what? They seem to be on the cusp of a championship every year. They almost came from 3-0 down and getting it this year, getting to the championship at least. They're there. They just need that one player with the consistency to get them over the top.
And if he actually can fit in with Tatum and Brown and they play well, in crunch time, he may come off the bench, but he'll be on the floor in crunch time. And you're talking about three guys who can put the ball in the basket.
Yeah, and that's what you need at crunch time. Guys that can almost guarantee, like a Kevin Durant, a guaranteed bucket, or even a Carmelo Anthony in his best days, a guaranteed bucket. And we'll see what the Celtics come up with. And I know there's more news coming up in addition to this draft. There will be a lot of trades, I'm assuming, tomorrow when the draft does come. There will be players leaving, but different trades in the NBA than you would have in the NFL because you have to match salaries and now you have all of this stuff going on. And that takes us to, where did they come from before they get to the NBA? College basketball. I know it's so far away, but hey, there's a former NBA player who's now a coach who's been having seemingly nothing but problems most of the time off of the court. Penny Hardaway missing 3 games to start the 2023 season as he's been suspended because of recruiting violations. Visitation. We have all of these things going on right now with NIL, money going not even under the table, but in your face. All of these things going on, and he still chooses something you could get suspended for. Penny Hardaway. Come on, bro.
I mean, where's the compliance officer? I mean, how didn't somebody in that program know that they couldn't visit
He did
at his home? You can only make contact at school. And they did it twice. His assistant did it, and then he did it again a few weeks later. I don't understand. I mean, you know, compliance is huge in college programs.
Absolutely.
So either they just disregarded it or they don't know what they're doing down there.
I thought they were going to be a little lenient with NIL and things kind of loosening up around the tight regulations that the NCAA used to have, but no, it's a lot of the same with the exception of NIL and the transfer portal. And with the transfer portal, people have a few more opportunities to do the wrong thing. And it seems like Penny Hardaway is always finding a way to either have the wrong player do the wrong thing or even both. Now he's suspended for the first 3 games, which really doesn't matter when you're at Memphis. But what's up with Memphis anyway? Before Calipari went over to Kentucky, he was at Memphis. He had Derrick Rose. He had someone taking Derrick Rose's SATs. Derrick Rose leaves. He leaves Kentucky, leaves Memphis in limbo. I mean, this is just what happens at Memphis, it seems. And now you have Mikey Williams with Ja Morant charges, 5 charges for guns. And he's just a high school guy graduating to the college ranks and hopefully may be there as his trial's been pushed, I believe, to July 12th.
Yeah, maybe you can compare them to the old SMU days in college football. And that's about the only comparison I can think of right now.
Give them the death penalty. Get rid of their program for 2 years like they did SMU, where they had the Pony Express or even after that, and the Datsun 280ZXs that everybody seemed to own back then that you weren't supposed to have. It's unbelievable what's been happening right now. And finally, I think we'll go back to NBA because I kind of mixed things up a little bit. Well, Dame might be going to the Heat. How about that one? I mean, he's certainly someone who could help them immediately. But how does that work with the salary cap?
Yeah, I'm sure there's a bunch of obstacles that would need to be ironed out. But if Pat Riley wants him, he's going to find a way. Mm-hmm. As long as Dame is on board with going along with it, Pat Riley will find a way. And that puts the Heat right there at the top.
Oh, yeah, I think.
In the East. So, I mean, we'll see what happens. But Dame going to South Beach, that puts the Heat right up there with the Celtics and the Bucks. And I think at this point right now, that puts them past the 76ers. But and it sounds strange to say because they're the team in the finals, but I still think most people consider those other teams better than them.
Oh, yeah. It's still played on the court and not on paper, but on paper, they aren't the number 1 team or number 2 team or even number 3. But on the court where it matters, they were able to get to the finals this year when those other teams that were allegedly guaranteed in the preseason, didn't show up and do anything. So, yeah, but Dame would put them up there where they need to be because they already play defense. Now you have these offensive guys who can just blow the lights out between him and Butler, but you have other players. And I think that, definitely they're up there. I don't mind the Heat being successful as long as they're not more successful than the Knicks. Everybody's more successful than the Knicks these days, but I can live with it.
Games are
good basketball.
If the games are close, you know what time it is.
Oh, you do. It's time. It's time to get it done. And that puts a lid on the NBA talk for right now because now we can talk a little bit about the NFL, which is now starting to rear its head. Camps are opening up next month. Next month is July. Next week is July, going by next Saturday. But now NFL camps are going to open up and college as well. We're going to be not college camps, but college media days. We'll get a chance to talk about that in a minute. But before we talk about any of these things that are going on in the NFL, a former NFL player from the Pittsburgh Steelers, Clark Higgins, passes away at 46. Right now, they don't have a reason why he passed. It's just, man, some of these young guys, they're younger than us, and they're passing away. We've seen their entire career as NFL players, these types of players. And he's one of them. He played on the championship team for 8 years. He played with the Steelers, went on to the Cardinals, went on to the 49ers, and retired, supposedly was doing well. I just can't imagine at 46 years old, a healthy, big former football player, what's going on here?
Yeah, I just hope it's not CTE related or, brain injury, trauma, whatever related. Condolences to his family, friends, and I just hope it's not CTE because so many players have already been affected by that, and to see another one, it's just sad.
It's tragic in the whole scope of sports right now, the whole scope of football in particular. Over the past couple of episodes, we're talking about players dying, from high school players rising to college, or even former players like Ray Lewis's son. He wasn't an NFL player, but he was a football player that we at least knew something about or heard about. He passes away. Now we have another one. So you're talking 3 in about a week. And that's pretty eye-opening, if nothing else at all. And, condolences to the family, of course. And you don't get tired of saying condolences because you have legitimate condolences for the family, because you can only imagine what they're going through as their loved one who probably died way too soon is no longer there. And that brings us to, well, what? Tyreek Hill, still staying with the NFL. Tyreek Hill in trouble again. Under investigation down in Miami. He hits, I don't know who he hits, but someone at a marina, and now he's under investigation. Again, Tyreek Hill.
So according to TMZ, he and his crew, they were going to rent a boat, but they did not complete the transaction. Then they all try to get on the boat anyway without paying. So when the employees went over there, be like, hey, you can't get on this boat. Tyreek allegedly smacked the guy in the back of his neck. And then his friends, teammates, whoever was there with him, pulled him away and said he got loose and tried to charge him, but they grabbed him. I mean, this is all according to TMZ, but
yeah.
I mean, what are you doing? Are you just bullying people out there? Like, well, I'm going to take this boat. I mean, what is going on, man?
Entitled. A lot of these entitled athletes, and I don't think he's a microcosm of all of them. He's just a microcosm of himself and people who do the things that he does. This is not the first time we've seen something like this, just doing something and being able to get away with it or believing you can do it and you're beyond reproach. Tyreek Hill, who's been in so much trouble in the NFL since he's been here, has been given many chances. Now, does he get suspended? And if he does get suspended, we know it affects Miami. They had high hopes going into the season with Tua finally being healthy for a change and other moves and possibly a Dalvin Cook coming in, maybe not. But they were good and solid without him and trending upward without him. So now you have Tyreek Hill. If he's gone, bro, they're flatlining, especially in an AFC East, which has definitely gotten better with added players and better teams this upcoming season.
Yeah. I mean, depending on how physical he got, was it a little mush or did he smack the shit out of him? You know, he could get anywhere 2 to 6 games probably. You know, if it was just a little mush, he might get a game or two. But if it was an actual slap and if that dude is injured, now we're talking, a few weeks.
Or this guy's getting injured as we speak because he's thinking about what he can get. Roger Goodell's a little tougher than Adam Silver. You're like, you know what? I'm feeling kind of injured now a couple of days after the fact. It's like a car crash. You don't feel the injury during the car crash. It's always later.
I mean, man, Tyreek Hill, he's a smaller guy.
Bro, he's diesel, though. This guy's a pure...
I'm just saying, he might have a Napoleon complex.
Maybe he does. I think Napoleon would have smacked the same guy. But, but the problem is, why, it doesn't give you the right to smack anybody, especially unprovoked, especially when you're completely in the wrong, you and your entourage, and we get to points like this. It's ridiculous, but that's the way it is right now. And so another wide receiver who hasn't smacked anybody lately or at all, DeAndre Hopkins, he's guaranteeing the next team that he goes to, he's telling those wide receivers, I'm going to make your job easy. I'm going to make it easier if I come to your team and I'm on the other side. I'll take the pressure off you. You can shine just as well as I can. I'm going to get double teamed and still get to the Pro Bowl. You won't be double teamed. You'll have a chance to join me at the Pro Bowl.
Yeah, maybe he wasn't happy with his visits to New England and where else he go, Tennessee. And maybe he's trying to get word out. Hey, put a word in for me with your front office, with your coach. I mean, everybody knows if he comes to your team, he's going to automatically make it easier on the other wide receivers because he's getting the bulk of the attention. So I don't think he needed to say that.
No, I think he's a little hyped up because he's just getting close. He wants somebody to pull the trigger. He still wants his bag because he had $18 million coming to him. Everything wasn't guaranteed, but it's got to be in the ballpark for whoever picks him up. You got to find a way to finagle yourself around the salary cap and get it there. But we'll just sit back and wait because things have to start happening soon. Camp is next month, next Saturday, next week. July's here.
Between him, Diggs, and Cook, they're giving us stuff to talk about. So
the Supremes, man, the Supremes. That's how they are, man. All three of them Supremes. All they need is beehive hairdos. That's it, man. But that's what's going on in the NFL right now, and I like to close it out on the SEC domination, which I believe is the number one conference in the entire college football ranks, and they're getting better. When Texas and Oklahoma comes in 2024, this upcoming season, we have the defending champs. And before that, the champs that used to be in Alabama, Georgia, Alabama. Now you're going to have Oklahoma and Texas. I just wanted to touch on that because it's right around the corner. I mean, Texas with Steve Sarkisian as their coach, the former USC quarterback, BYU quarterback, USC coach, came to Alabama as well, as you know, as an offensive coordinator. And now he has some weapons. Well, Quentin Ewers still there as the starting quarterback, beating out Arch Manning, the nephew of Peyton and Eli Manning, who I expected not to win the job in the spring because he's still growing. It's a big, huge difference between high school and top-notch football, let alone the SEC. So I just wanted to put that out there. And I'll let you close it out with the quirky rule. What's going on in baseball with the White Sox yesterday? Get out of here.
So after we completed our podcast last night, I go up and I put on the White Sox game, and they had runners on second and third. They were down a run, and Elvis Andrus got a single, and the rookie, Remillard, he got another big hit, and Elvis Andrus was coming around third going home. And it was a bang-bang play, and the umpire called him out. But with it being the eighth inning, the White Sox challenged it. And then on first replay, you could tell he got tagged before his hand touched home plate. I was like, oh, he's out. At least he gave it a shot. But then when the umpire came out, they were discussing it a lot longer than you would think, because replay clearly showed he was tagged before he touched home plate. So umpire comes out and says, after review, the play has been overturned, the score counts. And I was like, what the hell? I saw the replay. They showed it like 9 times, and he was tagged every time before he touched the plate. But then the umpire said that the catcher violated the rule, and he had his foot on the plate. And if you look at the play, he wasn't really blocking the plate, but he did have his foot on home plate. And so by the letter of the law, the call was correct. So the run counted, and the White Sox won.
But you say he didn't have the ball in his hand. Was that the reason why you're not supposed to have? He didn't have the ball in his hand, and his foot was on the plate.
So he was straddling home plate when the ball was coming his way. He shifted, caught the ball, had his foot on home plate, made the tag. So he was straddling home plate without the ball, switched, had his foot on the plate without the ball, caught it, and made the tag.
Just too much.
You're supposed to leave some type of lane for the runner to run into or to go to home plate. And you can see if you watch the replay, Andrus kind of had to change his path because of where the catcher was. Instead of going outside, he had to come inside, which maybe had made him lose a step or two.
Man, whatever happened to old school baseball with Mike Scioscia just taking the hit, just a collision, making baseball more of a physical game? We just kind of wussified the entire
fun out of
realm. It's not going to happen anymore. But hey,
I mean, who can forget Pudge Rodriguez getting bowled over in the playoff game and getting up and holding the ball like, I got it, he's out.
Man, Pudge was tough, bro. Pudge is freaking.
You take that play away from baseball.
Exactly. That, I understand they're looking at the health of the players, man, but I know things evolve as time goes on, and you're looking out for the safety of the players. We have CTE, which is the newest thing that people are very interested and worried about these days. But God, you do take away from our childhood, and you're going to take away from our viewing pleasure, not watching the collision at home plate. So that'll be it for us today on the episode number 14 of the Sports Bag Bros podcast. I got it right this time. After all that talking, I was able to get it nice and smooth toward the end. I'm Trav. He's biased. We'll be back with you tomorrow. Episode number 15. The NBA draft will probably be a thing in front of us while we're on. See you then.